If the school is not providing education, whoever is involved can take the school to court, and then the school district has to pay.
That's crazy. Today, we have Jake Noonan,
who is challenging how we think about education, authority, and learning itself.
A lot of people that just don't understand what's actually happening in the schools.
Yeah, it goes toward bureaucracy.
What? Oh, everything makes so much more sense now. If two students get in a fight about something, rather than punishing both people, let's talk about like what happened, how can we do better? But a lot of the alternative schools don't do it right and just say, we're doing the thing, but
God.
you're not, and it's causing more harm because then the people hoping for that thing are getting the opposite.
Is there anyone that's doing it right? Or is the whole system just fucked?
Until we do that, public education is kind of gonna be a little fucked for a bit.
To make learning cool, what kind of reform is needed?
If you give the students their creative integrity and you trust them that whatever topic they're gonna bring their creativity to it, just needed is taking a step back, letting the teachers be teachers, trusting the kids and letting them authentically engage with whatever their interests are.
What do you think is happening?
Why do we care so much about Joe Rogan, Ben Shapiro, or Andrew Tate? All of them are trying to sell you something and you're buying it. That's not where the money is. The money is in.
It is interesting, but also sad.
People are afraid of change. They don't want to adapt and learn new things because...
Hello, and welcome back to the Men's Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Marc, and I'm here with Jake Noonan. He works with the Neurodiversity Collective. We've actually had one of his partners on, Dr. Matt, who's talked about neurodiversity, and I'm happy to have Jake on to kind of look at it from another angle. He's an academic neurodiversity coach, and he works mainly with young men and boys. So I'm really excited for this conversation because we haven't talked too much about the younger part of our generation. We focus more on kind of like older guys. So Jake, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's awesome to meet you. Awesome to be here.
Yeah, so I'm really excited by the work that you do. We talk about 1,000 times that like our generation, the older generation needs to step up to be there with the youth. And I really love that you've really dedicated your life to that. So I want to start with your story. Like, how did you get into doing this work?
Ooh, it's a long story a little bit, but it kind of started like when I was really little because I was always challenging a lot of things. And in education, like I was put in the gifted program in kindergarten in Pennsylvania. So like in the Philly school district, I'm one of like the few kids that were pushed through a little bit ahead of time. Um, so I always knew that like something was a little off for me compared to like my peers, but I didn't understand why or like what was really going on. All I knew was like giftedness is a thing. Cool. You check that box, moving on. Um, and it wasn't really until my senior year that I had a teacher who really inspired me. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with life at all. I was just like, I'm having fun, whatever. I don't know. I just play drums. I don't know anything. Um, but I had a philosophy teacher my senior year who like really inspired me to become a teacher. And he was like, no, like you ask a lot of really good questions. Like you're not looking at things just as taking them as they are. Like if somebody says something, you are stopping and you're thinking about it and then questioning them a little bit and critiquing them. And he was like, you don't really care much about positions of like hierarchy. Like if someone's a CEO at a company, like you'll talk to them the same way that you talk to like the janitor that we have at school. So he kind of saw that in me. And I initially went to school for philosophy and then was like, I'm not going to be able to do anything with this because it's philosophy. You just write books and teach, which is kind of what I was going to end up doing anyway.
Yeah.
So I went from there. Talked to my teacher. He was like, go for education, go for English, do something with that because like that's what you're really good at. And I followed that. Ended up not being able to find a job teaching right out of college because I graduated late 2014. And from there, I was like, I'm gonna go somewhere else. And I ended up teaching for a year in South Korea, and then came back home and found a position at a gifted program, gifted school, which is where I met Dr. Matt. And we became friends like then. We kept in touch ever since, obviously. um, but from that point forward, I was like, something else is a little off. Um, and what brought me into like the Neurodiversity Collective and into like the world of the neurodiverse education and academic aspects of it was I was diagnosed with ADHD at 29, like throughout COVID, and had like really in-depth conversations with my psychiatrist about it, like what it all meant, what it looked like, and then revisiting my entire life up to this point and being like, oh, everything makes so much more sense now. So trying to take that alongside like my teaching background, my humanities background, my like passion for like music, games, like all these different things and bring it to students and other people so we're able to all just kind of see the world through different perspectives and different lenses rather than just, "This is how it is. This is how it's always been. That's it. We can't do anything about it."
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I'm curious, like, kind of, it sounds like you went to school like in the 90s or early 2000s, right? Like what did neurodiversity look like? Because yeah, like I was in the gifted program. I feel like we had gifted, we had like special education. I mean, there was like honors, I guess, but like there wasn't nearly as much education or even like diagnosis or anything that there is today. So like, what was it like when you were going through? Like, what did gifted mean? I guess maybe it's another way of asking that question.
Ooh. So gifted in school, so first off, going through school, was really different in the '90s compared to now, and seeing it from, like, the other side, like, the teacher side compared to when I was in school. Um, so, like, yeah, we had the gifted program, which was, like, all the, quote, "smart kids" who were just good at math or science mostly, which has a whole whole 'nother level to it, but, um and then you had, like, the special ed classes, which was like, "We're not gonna talk about these kids. We're just gonna put them off in a corner, and they can do their own thing," and like, a big thing that did shift that I realized as a teacher was that No Child Left Behind from, the Bush era had a huge impact on the integration and then the education system in general just because we started focusing more on having everybody at a baseline rather than understanding that there's a difference in learning between so many different kinds of people and so many different, like, brains, and that, like, if you have somebody in school who's nonverbal, they're obviously gonna fail at a verbal test. So, like, why are we even bothering trying that when we could be good putting, like, better systems in place to support them to the point where maybe they can start talking again? So, it's like a very, like, long-winded conversation and points to make, but it's just very complicated, and seeing the differences from then to now everything's more integrated. We've got more understanding. We've got more education about everything. So knowing also that, like, twice-exceptionality is a thing with giftedness and ADHD, autism, dyslexia, like any of the other broad terms under neurodiversity, like, having more of understanding, I think, is also helping education nowadays more than ever before.
Yeah. Yeah. And my understanding, and it sounds like you're saying, is that neurodiversity tends to cluster together. Right, so people tend to kind of, like, have features from all the different parts of that spectrum,
Yeah.
and, yeah, I'm hearing that, like, yeah, schools I mean, from the schools I see modern, it's like, they think outside the box more, right? There's more, like, standing desks, or there's more, like, fidget spinners, or there's more kind of, like, different ways of learning versus of what I'm hearing you say, kind of, like, silo everybody, but, like, it doesn't really change the way that the schools run, it's just, like, segregation.
Yeah, and it's like it's sad too because there's so many things that we need to do for education to update it to keep up with what's going on now rather than education was made essentially for the 1920s, like, initial, industrial revolution era for just plug and play workers, like, everyone has to have a baseline of this knowledge of what it is to be an American, but we don't even know what it is to be an American anymore, and even back then, we didn't know what it was to be an American besides just some amorphous, idealistic phrases like freedom and the best in the world, whatever, like, education really, just needs to catch up a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanna ask you about that, but first I wanna ask about more about your experience because, you mentioned in your bio that you taught both in traditional schools as well as alternative schools. So I'm wondering, it sounds like you've had a good amount of experience in, like, different types of educational settings. What are some of those differences for people that have been, been at school for a while, that don't quite know what's happening right now?
So the traditional model right now, when you think of, like, public schools, is getting a lot of shit from people just across the board for no good reason, and a lot of people that just don't understand, like, what's actually happening in the schools, in the classrooms, and, like, the lack of resources across the board that schools have and the demand that's being put on them. So in, the first public school I was at was in Philadelphia public school, like, a lot of the kids there were struggling across the board just because, like, either their parents weren't both at home, or they were working 2 jobs themselves, or one girl in my class was 17 and had a kid already. So, like, she's like, "My daughter is, like, 2. I have to worry about taking her to daycare for school and then working after school to be able to afford the daycare." And it's like, we're at the same time asking this student to go home and then put in, X amount of hours of work on whatever projects, and then come back in the next day, and because we as teachers have to do specific things and we have specific criteria we have to meet, that pressure is now being put on the student who's struggling already at home, and then it puts this huge issue between the two and just between the community in general and the school and then the perspective on teachers. Um, so that's like one huge aspect is just the disconnect between teachers and students, teachers and the culture, but then also the culture around us and teachers. Like it goes both directions. Whereas in the alternative schools, like I taught at a restorative school, which was interesting. Um, that one was more, we're going to tell you we're restorative, but we're going to more so force the restorative practices on students rather than encourage them to want to actively participate in them. So like restorative schools being like if two students get in a fight about something, rather than punishing both people or, be like, you started it, so you're punished, and you participated, so you're also punished. Um, it's more of like, hey, let's have a whole circle with everybody involved and let's talk about like what happened, why did it happen, how can we do better, like how does this affect the whole community? So like those ideas are great, but a lot of the alternative schools that are trying to do those things don't do it right and just say they're doing it. Which was one of the ones that I was at, was it's just telling people up front, like, we're doing the thing, but you're not actually doing the thing. And it's causing more harm because then the people coming to you hoping for that thing are getting the opposite. Um, and there's another alternative school that I was teaching at that was all one-on-one education. And this one really left a bad taste in my mouth about the future of education and where it's going right now. Um, just because they started seeing it as a plug and play model of anybody can come in and be a teacher. You just need a college degree to be a quote teacher because everything's prepared for you, everything's made for you, but it lacks the educational psychology behind it of understanding like these aren't just tools that you can fill with knowledge. Like these are people who have feelings, who have emotions, who have histories and backgrounds and cultures, and we have to understand all of that. Um, And seeing that aspect of that school and then the economic aspect of it and the deep-rooted issues where they were raising tuition like 8 to 10% almost every year. Um, and the school that I was at for the whole, like, conglomerate of schools in a sense, they were set near a failing school district specifically so that the legality behind the schools, like public schools, you have to send a student there. Like, legally speaking, they have to fund and have to provide education. So if the school itself is failing, if the school is, like, not providing that education, the parents, the whoever's involved can take the school to court, and then if they win the lawsuit about, like, failure to education, what have you, the school district has to pay for them to go somewhere else. So, putting a school like this that I was at near a failing public school is basically just like, "Hey, there's blank checks coming from that school. We can just take these kids and then say that we're teaching them, but we're not actually." At the same place, I had a senior in my class who was a really sad story for him just because nobody paid attention, nobody really cared, nobody pressured him or pushed him, so he just kind of fell through the cracks a little. He couldn't write a sentence, and I had him for a 12th grade English class, and I was being told to pass him because he had to graduate, and I was like, "That doesn't make any sense, and that goes against everything I am and stand for as a teacher. Like, what are you talking about?" So, yeah, just there's a lot of issues on both sides between, traditional/public education and then the alternative models, and we're not understanding as a culture, like, the positives or the negatives of either side.
Yeah, I mean, those are some really fascinating stories, and it is both interesting, but also kind of like sad, right? To hear of like some of those corruption, right? Or like, pushing people to get their numbers up, right? It sucks that like something that as critical and as like pure in a way as education of the youth should be gets really bogged down by all these like social, political, and economic issues.
Yeah, and the saddest part about it is, like, from a natural standpoint, education as, like, an ideology is naturally progressive. It's naturally going to lean, I don't wanna say, like, left wing, right wing, because like, that's more contemporary ideologies of it, but it leans more in the theory of progressiveness. So it's more of like, this is how things were. Progress is going to the next step to make things better for everybody, not better for, like, specific people, not better for a handful of people. Um, so it's just really sad to see that education is being so heavily ostracized and alienated and looked down upon when it's like you were saying, it's like pretty much the most important thing in our society. Like without education, we don't really have a future.
We don't have anything. Yes, I mean, yeah.
No, like not at
Yeah,
all.
we just sort of destroy the foundation of everything, yeah, and with skills that, like, I feel like are not being taught in the same way, like, critical thinking, right, or, like, reading comprehension or, like, debate, I
Mhm.
mean, stuff that our country really needs right now are not really being seemingly not as effective as they have been before.
Yeah, and that's the saddest part too is because like, part of the one side where people want to go for that private education and take back, like, the public education's terrible, so, like, why are we funding it? Like, that whole mentality. Part of it for them is that they do see the failing and they're like, "Oh, this other alternative method is going to do better for my student," or, "Why don't we all just do this method? Because it's clearly working, it's clearly better," but they're not understanding, like, the capitalistic perspective of it, of, like, that side's more about money than anything else. It's not necessarily about the education. Whereas the other side's more about the education, but the funding's not there. And the funding that is there goes towards more problematic things like bolstering administration, hiring more admin to do more meaningless like work for whatever reason. So it's just sad, like across the board.
Yeah, it's a sorry state. Yeah, yeah, it goes towards like bureaucracy. I mean, I have a number of friends that are teachers, and like I was blown away by how much they have to spend, right? Buying supplies and like, like nothing is covered, right? It's like they want to do anything that's like the least amount of creativity, like the barest thing, like, oh, make a poster, right? They have to supply all that stuff. And I was like, that's crazy, Like I thought the school
Yeah.
just like had all that shit, I don't know. I was ignorant to it. Yeah.
No, they do not. Well, it's perfect example of like corruption that's seeping into public education, for instance. The school districts that I grew up in, I went to the Philadelphia school district, then we moved away from Philly right outside in Bucks County. Um, and there's a school district there that they got incredibly politically charged in a detrimental way, where I don't know, like, how political you guys get on the podcast, but if you have, like, anybody who understands or knows anything about Moms for Liberty, for instance, um, they essentially took over the school board that was nearby, and there was an issue with the superintendent that they put in place, where he essentially only served for, like, 6 to 8 months, and because the school board was predominantly, Moms for Liberty candidates, there were, like, 4 out of 5 of them. They were losing all of their elections the next cycle because, like, they just kind of ruined everything for everybody, and they didn't care about the actual education. They were pushing more like, "Ban this book because it says something that we don't like," or "Ban that book," or like, "This mom that's over here who's not even affiliated directly with the school said something on their Instagram page 3 years ago, so, like, they're not allowed at school." And it's like, that's what you're putting your time into? So they
Hate
all
to
got
see it,
kicked out.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but it gets even worse because when they all got kicked out the week before, they offered this superintendent that they put in place a severance package for like $2 million that was covered by taxpayers. And he quit, got that severance package, all of them left, and then the school lost all of this money that they just basically came in and essentially took and gave to this person that they liked.
Yeah, it's like legal embezzlement, right? I mean, it sounds like the guy just embezzled $2 million.
Pretty much, yeah. If not more, because his pay was like $600,000 a year. And then the teachers in that district are barely making, 50, 60,000.
Yeah. It's wild. It's wild that, like, all the stuff that, is in our country, right? Like the bloat at the top and all the money being it's like it's still in the public education district, you know? Um,
Yeah.
yeah, is there anyone I mean, I don't wanna be so doom and gloom about it, like, is there anyone that's doing it right? Is there any, like, model or anything that you've encountered that's doing it right, or is the whole system just fucked? If you're enjoying the podcast so far, please hit the subscribe button and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us to reach more men and inspire them to become the best versions of themselves. Thank you for your support. And now back to the show.
The whole system is a little fucked because we don't really like to go back and, like, pick at the wounds that we've had as a country and, like, unveil, like, what's actually going on and heal it. So, until we do that, public education and education in general is kinda gonna be a little fucked for a bit. Um, but inside the schools themselves, there's a ton of individual teachers, individual, like, admin, individual superintendents doing really great things, And there's also really good politicians, like, pushing for academic reform and, like, scholarship in a sense. Like, one of my personal favorites has always been, since she got elected, Rashida Tlaib. Like, she's pushing for a lot of education, and a lot of support for, um, Palestinian immigrants and just broadly immigrants, and then understanding, like, the level that, like, immigration has on not only our economic aspects, but, like, our education system as well, and, like, prioritizing that and seeing that, like, there are politicians out there prioritizing it. There's the teachers that, like, I've met in person, there's people I've met at presentation conferences and whatnot. Like, there's a lot of people that are pushing for the good, and there's a lot of people making those positive changes and really genuinely supporting education as an education. Um, but there's always those handful that are like, "I have the power and the money and the means, and I'm gonna take over, and you can't do anything about it until you kick me out of whatever position I'm in."
Right. Yeah, until you like, overcome my entrenched position. I wanna pivot a little bit to young boys, right? And in education system. And you may know the exact stats more. Feel free to drop them in if you do. But I know in general the trends tend to be that, now more than ever, men are like not completing high school. They're not going for college degrees. There's like a massive drop off in, overall GPA, overall grades. I mean, it seems like young boys and teenagers are really struggling in the education system right now in a way that they haven't before, So I'm just wondering if sounds like I see you nodding. So it's like, yeah, do you agree with that? And what do you think is happening in our education system for the young men out there?
I definitely agree with that, and at the same time, I would even expand it more, to just to broadly, like, everybody's struggling with education right now, and we like, collectively, we just don't care about learning anymore. Part of it is just that, like, on one side, for the teacher's perspective, like, teachers have so much to deal with, and there's constantly more being thrown at all of us, so it's initially, it used to be just teach the curriculum, then it was teach the curriculum, but also make it fun. Teach the curriculum, make it fun, but also engage everybody. Teach the curriculum, make it fun, engage everybody, and communicate with parents. Add all of that and keep adding and adding and adding, and that's been a constant thing that's been bogging down teachers. So, like, on one side, teachers are really only able to give, like, 60% of their true effort and time and care to the classroom because of all those external background things. And on the flip side, for, like, everybody in the learning environment, we're not empathizing with that level of that the teachers are dealing with. We're also not empathizing with each other and recognizing that, like, yeah, we're all in this system that is outdated, or if not outdated, it needs a revamp entirely. And we're here for a reason. We can still get something from our time here rather than just caring more about our phones, caring more about our friends that we have in class, caring more about, like, what else is going on in the world, which is important to talk about. And there's those classes where you can, and finding those classes where you can talk about them, finding those classes where you can, like, truly engage, but then also putting it on yourself to take responsibility for your own, like, academic rigor and integrity. Like, as a society, like, we know that education's failing. We know that education sucks right now as an endeavor. But recognizing that and then leaning into it is a choice. Like, you don't have to be like, "Oh, education sucks, so I don't care about what I'm learning. I don't care about what the teacher's talking about. I don't care about these activities." Like, you can still get stuff from those, even if the topic sucks for you. If you make it something that's enjoyable for yourself and you can engage with it in that way, that's what you should be trying to do. And it's not necessarily like, "Oh, education is terrible and I'm failing because my teacher's failing me." That is the case sometimes. I had a teacher like that. But what are you doing? Like, why do you not care about education? Why do you not care about learning? Why do you not care about these topics that we're talking about? Not every class sucks. Not every class has, like, useless topics and useless information. Like, I hated a lot of classes when I was in high school, middle school, like, elementary school, but at the same time, I can still recall at least something I got out of each one. And I think for a lot of these kids, it's we're so used to leaning into the darker aspects of things, leaning into those, like, more upsetting, more depressing, more, like, downtrodden kind of perspectives where we also need to take it on our own and take responsibility for our own emotions and our own feelings, our own thoughts, our own ideas, and own it.
Yeah. I think that's well said, and I can't help but think as you're talking, like, parents have to play a big role in this too, because I think there are a lot of cynical parents. I mean, I'm part of the millennial generation. I think you are too, right? A lot of us are cynical as shit. And like, I see, I see how some of us like, yeah, like talk to our kids about just like what you're saying of like, well, it's screwed, like everything's corrupt, like forget about it, like it's not worth investing in, right? Because I think a lot of us feel that way. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of like disaffected and downtrodden people in our generation. So I guess my question to throw it back to you is like, yeah, what can a parent do to encourage learning for their kid and to make learning cool, you know, and exciting and the fun thing to do?
That's a hard one. Because I'm not a parent. I don't want to be ever at this point, if we're being honest. Um, but parents just, like, get involved, but don't get too involved to the point where you're emailing the teacher, trying to get their numbers, trying to find them on social media, like, that's too involved. But also, let your kid fail and don't just back them up 100% all the time. There's times where they're going to be wrong, and maybe you should back off and listen a little bit and understand, like, why. Like, a good example of this is I was teaching, World War II history, and I had a mom who called me in the middle of the class and then wasn't understanding that I had class that her daughter was in. Called the school's, like, front office 3 or 4 times to the point where she had the person at the front desk come down to my room with the phone and was like, "She's not stopping, like, just can you just talk to her?" I was like, "Fine, like, I'll give her a couple minutes." It was a whole conversation about how the mom was getting mad that we were teaching the Holocaust in 10th grade, and I was like, "I gotta pause you right now, like, you do know that you're talking to a Jewish teacher, right?" And she was like, "Yeah, but I don't want you teaching my daughter the Holocaust." I was like, "What? Do you think that we can't handle those conversations? Like, do you your daughter is interested in these things, like, she's really passionate and curious about, like, why this is happening, what led to it, and, the like, as much as I hate to say it, like, the artistry behind, like, the lead up to the Holocaust and, like, how it was manipulated so well." Um, and she's like, why are you trying to pigeonhole your daughter and limit what she's exposed to? We're at a point where if she wants to learn about something, she can just go on and Google and find it. Would you rather have somebody who can actually understand the topic and explain it to your daughter and have, like, really deep conversations about it so that she's not just sitting there like, "Oh my god, 6,000,000 Jewish people were murdered," and that's all she can think about? Like, parents just need to understand and have a little bit of empathy. That's like, I don't know why they don't sometimes.
Yeah, what I'm hearing, like, yeah, just, like, not being so controlling and not having their kind of, like, like a bad term, like, snowflake syndrome, right? That, like, their opinions and their thing is the most important thing in the world. And yeah, I mean, that trend, I hear it again and again from, the dads I work with and the parents I work with of, like, how much everything moves towards control now, it seems like, right? Like, I think you were saying kind of the same thing where, like, education is more about, like, controlling and purging and banning and, like, really controlling the narrative versus, like, what I believe in and what I did to whatever, like, to some extent, right? Of like exploration, right? And critique and, debate. And, we were trying to like discover new things, right? Like, isn't that what education's supposed to be versus like ideological, like linear thinking, right? Like it's about holding multiple viewpoints at the same time and then figuring out where you are, along those spectrums, right?
Yeah, and also being, like, comfortable hearing the complete opposite viewpoint as yours, but also being able to, like, understand that from an intellectual level as, like, "This doesn't directly impact me, it's not my opinion, but I can at least empathize with it, understand it, rationalize it, and be like, 'Okay, I don't agree with you. I think you're wrong. Here's why I think you're wrong. Here's where those flaws are, but we can at least talk about it.'" It doesn't have to get personal, and there's too many times where people are afraid to talk about the things, and like you were saying, like, education, I 100% believe that it should be completely open. I've been yelled at a couple times as a teacher just because I've engaged in such, like, intense conversations with students where it's from an academic, educational standpoint, and it's from a holistic, curious standpoint where it's the kids know that they can be open and talk about things, but they also know that if they said something too far out of line, I would stop them, call them out on it in, like, a positive, supportive way, and then let them get back into the conversation because these kids don't know how to talk to each other anymore. Like, I can't tell you how many goddamn times I hear somebody say something stupid like the skibbity toilet bullshit or saying like sigma all the time. Like, yeah, we had our share of those kind of things back in the day, but like, is that all you know how to say now? Like, you can't even talk to each other about life, about what your interests in, like, what your personalities are, who you are? You just wanna mimic each other and just lean into that? Just be a shadow of who you actually are?
Yeah, it's scary, right? And I agree with you. What you're saying is like education should be the place to do it, right? Where there are like educators and moderators and teachers and mentors and like the older generation that can guide people, right? Because so much of this is happening online anyway, right? It's happening on TikTok, it's happening on Discord, right? Like it's happening, where parents and adults can't see it. And it's gonna, look, I mean, I also grew up on the internet. Like it goes into like racial slurs, right? It goes into like homophobia, right? Like it gets dark as shit when there's like no adults in the room, right? Because kids are savages, right? It's like Lord of the Flies out there, man, right? It's there's like we need
There's
educators
a
to
reason
be
that
there.
book exists.
Right, like it's true. I mean, it's true. That kids they need to learn that kind of stuff. They learn decorum and respect and empathy. It doesn't really come out of the box.
Yeah. Like, one of my favorite things I always did with, my classes, and this was at the gifted school that I taught at. We would make a game of things. So, like, the first unit, I always made into some kind of a game. So, um, we did oral storytelling, for instance, and I have this game called Dialect, where it's just everybody comes together and builds a character for each other based off of the archetypes, and then you build a story together with a language that you, like, have specific words that have meaning, and then you take them apart, you dissect them, you rebuild them as a new word, and then collectively you act out a scene based in the world that you're building together to expand that story. So that led to so many intense conversations with the kids that they still talk about today. Like, I have a couple kids who reach out to me here and there who graduated like years ago. Um, like another one is, for teaching Japanese, like, occupation in Korea. I have, like, this whole thing where we pretend like the entire world disappears and the class is the only group of people, so it's kinda channeling, like, Lord of the Flies-esque, and the amount of kids that will just lean into the darker elements as soon as possible when they see that they've got that complete freedom, be like, "I wanna kill somebody," and you're like, "Okay, but why?" And they're like, "Well, 'cause 'cause I can," and I'm like, "Okay, what will that do to you?" And they're like, "Well, I can do it." And I'm like, "Are you thinking further than that? Like, why is this the first thing you're jumping to?" And things like that really help the kids start critically thinking about, "Why was that the first thing I wanted to jump to was killing somebody?" Like, why was that the first thing that came to my mind? Where did you make that jump? What
Yeah,
was the point from here to here?
it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Yeah, it's like getting away with something that they can't usually. Yeah, so let me kind of like put it back to young men in the classroom, right? It's like, what do you think would need to change in the educational system to be able to support young men and boys more? What kind of reform is needed?
I would say genuinely sweeping reform, from a sociocultural lens of, like, how we are as a country and a culture, and then also internally. So thinking about it, like, broadly speaking, the education system is flawed, like we were talking about before. Um, but I think that just if the system was to give more freedom to the students and to trust them a little bit more and to let them lean in and have ownership of their own learning more authentically, we'd see a lot more success. Like, teaching through projects, for instance, like, whatever that might look like for certain teachers, certain schools, whatever the resources might be. If you give the students, like, their creative, like, integrity and you trust them that whatever topic they're gonna bring, they're gonna connect, they're gonna bring their creativity to it. I, like, I had a kid. I give them complete freedom with this. So the big thing that I tend to do is I'll do 2 projects per unit, per semester, quarter, what have you, where one's completely creative. You can do whatever you want in any medium as long as you approve it with me, and it has to connect to something we're talking about and something we've been doing. So I was teaching, like, Sumerian mythology, the Sumerian culture and pantheon and everything, And one kid was just, like, not really paying attention all the time. He was, like, picking up on, like, what was going on. He was like, "Yeah, this is fine, whatever. I'm not super interested." When he engaged in that creative project, he built this whole ziggurat. He built the entire city that we were talking about, like, with the marketplace, with the trees, like, all in Minecraft. And I was like, "This is this kinda stuff that education should be doing rather than just sitting here talking to the kid about what it was like." Like, give them the freedom to actually explore. If they wanna learn about it, again, they can just go on Google. They can just find things on there. At the same time, we can't trust all the things on Google. Like, why not just let them lean in? And if we looked at education as a system, understood that it was initially, like, if you go back to the 1500s, 1600s, it was centered on the individual. It was centered on looking at them as a person and what their interests are. Um, like, one of the big ones, I always get them confused if it was Rousseau or Descartes, but they wrote, and I always pronounce it wrong, Emile, on education, and it's basically just about how whichever of the 2 writers was, they took this one student and they just followed them and, like, follow what they were interested in, and the kid really started critically thinking, and we took that out, and we took that out after, like, people like Michel de Montaigne, who also was writing about this kinda stuff. People like Whitman and Thoreau and, Emerson, who were, like, the transcendentalists who we base a lot of our education system on, we aren't agreeing with what they thought. So, like, how did we get from the point of we value the creativity, the individual, their, like, perspective of engaging with the world hands-on more authentically, to sit down in your seat, listen to the rules, I'm telling you this stuff, here's your worksheet, do it. Here's a test, do it. Here's your future, go. You're only doing this for college. Like, that's the core that I would think is just needed, is taking a step back, letting the teachers be teachers, trusting the kids, and letting them authentically engage with whatever their interests are.
Yeah, I wanna build on that a little bit, right? Because I guess the way that I frame it, and please correct me if this doesn't work, but, like, I feel like our education is built for the industrial era, right? Like, it's built for, like, the factory worker. It's built for, like, like, rote memorization, bells, time, right? Like, homework, right? It's, like, meant to instill, like, this kind of, like, old school American work ethic that really is not that applicable, frankly, anymore, right? So my question for you is, like, now that we're in the digital age, right? And you've mentioned, Google and all these, Minecraft and Discord and all these other ways that kids are existing. What needs to change? I mean, I'll throw in, like, you got AI in there, we got VR, right? I mean, there's, like, all this crazy new tech and just, I mean, not just tech, but, like, layers of reality, right? That kids are a part of. How do we start to integrate that more into a more, like, digital friendly education system? Because I do think it's like 50 years behind, right? It's still factory workers and, like, library cards.
Yeah, and that's the sad thing too, is, like, it is set for the industrial era. It is set for those, like, "Here you go, get through high school, now you can get a job, go. You're a working class person who follows all the rules perfectly because that's what we taught you." Um, it's hard, honestly. It's so difficult. Um, it's all out there, and not being afraid of it and leaning in and engaging with it and letting
Yeah.
the kids bring that to the room when they know about it. Because, like, there's so, like you were saying, there's so much out there. There's one program that I found that, well, not I found, a student found and showed it to me, that's like a 3D, museum exhibit that you can make that is VR. So, like, there's ways that we can integrate that into education, but nobody wants to because people are afraid of change and they don't want to adapt and learn new things. And if you're a teacher who's been teaching for 30 years and you're like, I know about this copying machine that's continually breaking, and I know about these worksheets that I have, and I know the traditional curriculum that I've got, and I just want to get home at the end of the day and I want to go to sleep. Like, it's hard for people like that. And I empathize with them because, like, you're asking somebody who's like 40, 50, 60 years old to completely upend and change their entire perspective of the world. So that's hard, but if it kind of goes back again to, like, if we can encourage those kind of teachers to let go a little bit and give some of the control over to the students who can integrate those digital elements, who can also support the teacher in understanding those digital elements, it will also build more of a community. So, like, leaning in is really key. And being completely clear about the fact that like ChatGPT, it's really easy to tell when you're using it as a teacher. Like your writing style does not change that much over the course of a week. I'm sorry. It's very obvious to tell when you're using ChatGPT.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I agree, right? Like, I hope they utilize that stuff more because I look at the kids and I'm a gamer, right? So I grew up on video games and like I was super engaged with that. I think kids now are even more engaged than I was, and it's like you have a kid that like won't do their homework, but they'll watch hours of like Fortnite strategy videos, right? And really master that or master League of Legends or like really just like become truly like exceptional at like a skill. I mean, it's not as useful as like, chemistry, right? But it's like a skill. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you wanted to open up, but you were afraid that it wouldn't be taken well? You ask yourself, what's the point? Nothing's gonna change anyway. So you do what you always do. You push it down, numb out the pain with a drink, a night out, or pornography. I've been there myself, and I know that men lack the outlets for emotional expression, which is why I founded Men's Therapy Online, a healing hub for men's mental health. If you've been knocked on your ass or just crave meaningful connection, join Men's Therapy Online, a community of men who just get it. We offer individual therapy, men's groups, and powerful retreats all led by licensed therapists. At Men's Therapy Online, we will help you to get back on your feet and take your life to the next level. Start your journey today at menstherapy.online. I just wonder, like, yes, like, how do you get that? How do you gamify things, right? Or how do you create VR classrooms? Or how do you create things that are like on par with the, consumerism stuff that they're consuming, right? That's like as fun as something like Fortnite or as engaging that feels like an actual competitor. Because it's like, oh, I can like, you know, run off my friends and like be Spider-Man and fucking shoot Doctor Strange and like, be Darth Vader, or I can just like sit and do a workshop for a worksheet from like the 60s, right? It's a pretty easy choice. It's a pretty easy choice how you're going to be spending your afternoon.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And like that also goes to the fact that the kids are seeing through that, like, yeah, some of this is bullshit. Like the worksheets, yeah, a lot of them are bullshit. And I'll tell you that from a teacher's perspective. A ton of them are bullshit. Um, but like things like League of Legends, things like okay, perfect example. There was a kid that I had in one of the alternative schools where it was all one-on-one and did not want to do anything ever. So I brought in my Switch and I was like, "Look, if you do work for me for like 30 minutes and you're focused, last 20 minutes, I'll beat you to all hell in Smash Brothers repeatedly." And like that kid stepped it up. He was doing all of his work continuously, was on top of it. And his mom was like, "I don't understand what changed." I was like, "He just wanted to hang out and play games, and that was the motivation he needed." Like some of these things don't need to be like extreme and over the top. They can be simple as just like, "Hey, I know these kids like this one game. I'm gonna get this system that I already have or that like my somebody in my life has and bring it into class here and there even to just be like, if you guys are doing what you got to do, last 10 minutes we'll just play games. As long as you can keep it, appropriate. Like even something like that helps. And the Fortnite stuff, for instance, leaning into that as well. Like as a teacher, it's our job to kind of understand the student and their interests and then connect that and find ways to connect it to whatever the thing is we're trying to get them to learn. So I had a kid who was obsessed with Fortnite, like would not stop talking about it, would not want to do anything else. When we had COVID class online, like he was like, my mic's off, my camera's off. I'm playing Fortnite. Like, I don't give a shit about what you're talking about.
You cracked the code, yeah. A lot of kids did that.
I did that in my own class. Um, but this kid, like he just wanted to play Fortnite. So I asked him, I was like, look, here's the assignment. We're looking at American politics and American political thought right now. You have to look into 4 different things and show me what they mean. And I was like, what does that mean to you? We talked about it for a little bit in a one-on-one, obviously, because he was not going to turn his camera on and mic off in the whole class. But he ended up making this like custom level, I guess, custom world in Fortnite that showed in 4 different quadrants, like the specific event or topic, and then was like more of like an art piece about what that was. And this kid, like, he showed me a little bit about how he was making it, and I was like, "I don't understand how the fuck you are managing this, because you are building this shit in half a second, and you're explaining, like, how you made this huge tree show up, and that you expanded it, you flipped it upside down, you turned the color and like rotated it, and now you built it into this other thing. I was like, I don't understand it, but you're engaging. And like that's what I want is that you're thinking about the topics, you're engaging, and you're showing how can I produce this? How can I, reflect this back to my teacher? And that like, yeah, technology is gonna be scary. It's gonna keep advancing, but it's never stopped. It's just more exacerbated now. And recognizing that we can channel it, we can let the kids use it, we can show them how to use it, we can let them show us how to use it. I think that's the most important part with that.
I think that's the most important part. I was gonna say the same thing you just said. Like, yeah, the number one advice I give to a lot of the dads I work with, right, is like go into your kid's world or go into your son's world. And it might not be your world, right? Like you may have grew up like, playing hockey or whatever, right? But like if your son's playing Fortnite, like play a game with him. It'll take you 20 minutes and he will always remember that, right? Like get a Minecraft avatar and just like fucking run around for a little bit. Like you don't have to know what you're doing. Like that kid is going to love it. And I think especially as we want it, and that'll make them come into our world as adults more, right? Like your kid will want to go fishing with you more if you play Fortnite with him every once in a while, right? Like I think that exchange is so critical. And I agree. I think in education
Yeah.
it is also critical because they're more advanced than us in a lot of ways, right? Like, I mean, you talked about this kid throwing the wood in Fortnite. I mean, shit, man, he's doing like CAD, right? He's doing like computer aided
Yeah,
design and like architecture, digital architecture at a level that like you and I cannot comprehend and at a speed that you and I can't comprehend. And like, that's
exactly.
legit. Just because it makes like goofy, Spider-Man or whatever, right? Like, it doesn't matter. He's building skills that are like pretty wild.
Yeah, and it's impressive too, because like, that kid was going into the coding aspects a little bit and, like, making macros on his computer so that he could run specific programs that he couldn't use in Fortnite to make things happen faster, and I was like, "You wouldn't have done this normally." Like, what?
Yeah, I'm learning how to code. And again, I think so many parents and educators like miss that when they just say like, oh, all this technology is bad. Where like you got a kid who's like probably coding at an advanced level and he's like, in 10th grade. You right. And he's doing what like his contemporaries that in like their 40s and 50s are like just learning. Like
Or not even touching on because 'cause they're still in, like, what is it, like, C++ plus plus or something, whatever, like, the super old one was.
you're copying and pasting manually, right? And this kid's got freaking bots like running the game, right?
As society, we need to just step up across the board, like, talking more positively about everybody, whether that is a teacher, whether it is a therapist, whether it is the idea of teaching, the idea of therapy, whether it's the person at the cashier at McDonald's, like, that's not a negative job, that's not a meaningless job, that's the kind of thing that, like, you overlook and take for granted because there's gonna be a day where you're driving down the road and you're like, "I'm really hungry. I wanna get something to eat. Nothing's open. Oh, McDonald's is open. Let me stop in there. Here's somebody at the cash register," or, going through the drive-through, here's somebody at the drive-through, like, across the board, we just need to stop seeing so many people as beneath us and start seeing everybody as not equal, but equitable.
Yeah. I think it's valuing every part of society.
I've seen some, like, high school students who, when they give presentations, I'm like, "This kid should be a teacher," but he doesn't absorb that kind of media, and he only hears the negatives rather than the positives. And, like, even thinking about it broadly, there's so many boys out there now that are idolizing those awful people online who are just, "Look how much money I have. Look how many cars I have. Look how many women I have," rather than, "Look what good I'm putting out into the world. Look how happy I'm making the people around me." Like, why don't we put more emphasis on that? Why don't we put more emphasis on caring about each other? Why do we care so much about Joe Rogan or, um, Ben Shapiro or, Andrew Tate or, like, Charlie Kirk, those kind of people? All of them are trying to sell you something, and you're buying it across the board. Like, all they're spewing and selling you is negativity and how to ostracize one another, how to ostracize other communities rather than caring about those communities, understanding them, and trying to see like, "Oh, this is a different kind of person than I'm used to. This is a different type of idea that I'm used to. What can I get from it?" It's not, "What can I get from it?" It's, "Here's this other thing. I wanna go against it." And that trickles down into how people are absorbing it and understanding it too.
Yeah. Well, so let me ask you about that, right? Like, I think there's a lot of disaffected and pissed off young men out there, right? And I think, that those manosphere people are plugging into that, right? And there's a lot of guys that feel like they're never gonna get a girlfriend or they're never gonna be successful or, they're very lonely. Um, how can, like, we reach them, right? Because I agree. I mean, there's, like, these, like, I don't know, forces of evil, right? Or, like, forces of corruption that are reaching them, but the kind of more sane voices are not. I mean, what do you think need to change for to get to these young boys? Because a lot of them are falling into those holes, into those traps, you know?
Yeah, honestly, a lot of it's just talking about it and, like, pointing out, like, what's wrong with these things. Like, I can't tell you how many people I've talked to that have brought up, like, not even me bringing it up to them, but them bringing it up to me, like, someone like the Charlie Kirks, Joe Rogan, whatnot, but then not being able to really expand upon what they're saying or defend any of it, and once you poke one tiny little hole, their entire perspective of reality is shattered. Like, recognizing that first off, and then on the other side, promoting the voices that are doing the better work. So there's a lot of people out there who are pushing for a better and, like, prioritizing, equity, empathy, and, like, community. The only thing that sucks is that that's not where the money is. The money's in, the hardcore, separation, the hardcore, like, tribalist perspective on the world, really, and society. Um, like, I'll always plug one of my favorites, and he gets a lot of shit all the time because of his sarcasm. Hassan Piker, he is, like, above and beyond the idealistic sorry, not the idealistic, but the ideal, embodiment of, like, an accessible masculine figure for people who need a masculine figure in their life. Like, out of all the people that I've seen, and there's been a lot of them online, he's the only one that's really empathetic and understanding and is focused on the end goal of making things better for everybody while being masculine and understanding what that means in society. So there is this whole issue now of, like, men's identity, but I don't think that's a real thing. I think it's more projected by men and insecurity than anything else. And it's just we we're trying so hard to well, men are trying so hard to genuinely hold on to this ideal of masculinity. What is it to be a man? Without understanding that that was never really understood or defined in our society. And the people that are saying they're the manly men aren't even that. So, like, what?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of just, like, yeah, paper tigers, right? That, like, just really don't hold up upon scrutiny, and I agree. I mean, like we were talking about before, there's a lot of, like, youth, I think, are parroting ideas without really thinking about them, and, back to kinda your example of, like, the kid that just wants to murder at the minute the cops are gone, right? It's like, I think critical thinking, I keep coming back to that over and over again as, like, the most important skill to teach children is, like, just to question and to ask pointed questions and to be curious, right? And not just to, like, be mimics, because I do see a lot of that, a lot of just, like, and from our generation too, shit, I mean, and from everyone, like, it's not just the kids, I don't wanna blame them, it's like, a lot of people just, like, watch their podcast or watch their pundits or, watch a sensationalized whatever influencers, and they're just, like, vomiting back these, like, catchphrases almost, but there isn't, like, a real integration of it, and there's not a real, like, making it real other than just, like, yeah, vomiting them back, right? Just parroting over and over again.
And that's the saddest part too, is just critical thinking's gone.
It's crazy that you have to teach people, like, media literacy now, right? Like, it's like, "Hey, just, like, did you ever think about, like, why is this person telling me this thing?" Right? Like, "Where is this article coming from?" Like,
We don't get to that point. We don't like asking why.
yeah, like, is there another agenda? Like, is don't I find it kinda strange that, like, this article ends with, like, a referral code for, like, health supplements?
No, not at all. You just have to get them. It's fine.
Yeah, yeah, just buy them, right? I don't know, like, so yeah, it is a weird, but, yeah, Jake, we do have to move towards the end of our show here. As we're wrapping up, where can people find more about you online?
Yeah, absolutely. They can find me on Instagram at it's Instagram/Fliggins, Fliggins. Um, and then on LinkedIn, if you just look up Jake Noonan, and then at the Neurodiversity Collective, where I work alongside Dr. Matt for academic coaching, neurodiversity coaching, like all of that kind of stuff. And then um, one of my three bands, I'm in one band called Danger Club, one band called Sinful Ukes, Cynfulukes, and then another one called The Goodbye Minds, and they're all completely different styles.
Cool. Yeah. All that stuff will be in the show notes. You can go ahead and follow Jake. Check him out. Check out his work. Check out the Neurodiversity Collective. They're doing really good work, and they're one of the good voices out there that are trying to help kids succeed, especially if they are neurodiverse. And that I think we're finding that it tends to be more common than ever. I think everybody has some level of diversity, and it's more about like working with them. So Jake, thank you again for being on the show.
Of course. Thank you so much.
And listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Do all the socials, like, share, subscribe, send this over to either, a teenager that maybe needs to hear this, or a parent needs to hear this episode. Get the word out. It really helps to, follow our mission of increasing men's mental health across the board. So thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next week on another episode of the Men's Therapy Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. Don't forget to visit menstherapy.online to learn more about the work that we are doing to support and inspire men. Until next time, keep moving forward.